Hello everyone, I'm Christina of CSL Designs, and today I'm going to show you how to make this braided cabochon pendant. And this is what mine looks like. So obviously there's a cabochon there in the middle, and then I capture that using a braid here going all the way around the edge. It looks like that, and it's actually a 7-strand braid, but I've used double lengths of wire per strand, you could say, to create it, to give a really nice and interesting look. And the bail itself is also using a braid. That's a 4-strand braid. So obviously there's a lot of braiding going on. On the back it looks like this, so it's still free, and in case it flips around while you're wearing it, it doesn't really matter. Now I just chose to put a chain through this, but obviously you can choose whatever you want to. So if you want to learn how to make this, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to be using. What I have here is a 0.6mm regular round silver coated copper wire that I'm using. And then we of course need our cabochon as well. Now this specific one that I'm using is an oval shape, and it's about 2.5 by 3.5 centimeters in the measurements, but this is just what I'm using. You can really use this technique for any size and also many different shapes of cabochons. But then the kind that I'm using is a pink dyed agate gemstone cabochon, but like I said, you can obviously choose whichever you want to. So let's get all the materials ready and let's get started. So we then need to cut some lengths of our wire. So what I have here is 14 lengths of about 60 centimeters each. So these are going to be used to make the braid and obviously capture the cabochon. So I then took all my lengths of wire here and attached them to one of my spring clamps. So just to hold them together, so it's going to be easier to start the braid. Now what I've also done is left a tail of about 20 centimeters because we're going to use them later on. So what we need to do is start braiding from this point. So the way we're going to make the braid is actually working in pairs. So that means that two wires that are right next to each other are going to work as if it's one length for the braid. We're going to do that with all of them, so they're all going to be in pairs. Now right in the beginning here, it's going to be a little bit fiddly, but once we get into the braid after a couple of rounds or stitches, it's going to be much easier because they're naturally going to be separated. But for now we just have to kind of do it ourselves and keep track of it. So the way we're going to start the braid is, first of all, I want to just separate my wires a little bit. So I'm just going to count pairs. So that's 1, and then 2, 3, and then the 4th one. Just double check I have 3 on the other one. So there we go, and I'm going to separate it a little bit right here. So just gently pull the wires a bit from each other. Kind of just make a bit of a space. Now I'm doing this with 4 on the one side because that's the side I'm going to be starting from. If you want to start from the other side, that's completely fine. Just make sure you then have 4 pairs on that side and then 3 on this one. So 4 pairs on whichever side that you want to start on. Then to make the braid, like I said, we're going to remember to always work in pairs. So I'm going to take the very outer one on the right side here. And then we need to bring this from the outside and into the middle. But we need to go over and under the other pairs in the right way. So remember the pairs. For now we just have to separate them ourselves. I'm going to go over the next one, like that, and then underneath the next 2. So these 2 pairs here, bring it under them, and then basically into the middle, and just over towards the opposite side, because obviously that's how a braid works. We're taking from the one side with the most and then over to the other side. So there we go. And don't worry too much about how neat it gets right in the beginning. You kind of have to just get into it and get a rhythm going. Then from that one we need to go to the opposite side because that now has the most lengths. So separate out the outer one, and you need to go over the first pair after that and then under the next 2, and one of them is that one that we just brought over from the opposite side. So over 1 and under 2 and into the middle, and that now goes over to the opposite side and bring them all the way over, and then you can already start to see that the pairs are getting separated more. So once we do a few more rounds, it's going to become much easier. So now to the right side again, the new outer one needs to go over, but what I like to do is this one comes over the previous one, so it's a bit tricky to kind of get this over and get it as tight as possible. I like to get my braids as tight as I possibly can, so the way I try and do that is this second pair in that we need to go over, before I actually do it, I just push it down a little bit, so it's kind of going to be sticking out a little bit at the back. Doesn't have to be too much. And then remember, we need to go under these 2 here. So the last one that we just brought over, is actually coming under in there in the middle, so I just want to push that up a little bit. So you kind of have one going towards the back and then one coming a bit more towards the front. So I have them in place, and then I bring the outer one over that first pair and then just through and under the next two. Now because I pushed them up and down a bit, that also makes it easier to bring this in. Bring it in there, and then you just put these back in line. So you just press it down and press it against the others like that, and then back to the other side, because obviously we now brought this over to this one. Separate out the outer one, and the same principle, and pressing the first one down a bit to be able to get a tighter braid. And then the last one on this side here, the one right in the middle, I'm just pressing up a bit, and then I bring the outer one over the first one to then go through and under the next two. Now what we also need to make sure of when we're doing this braid is, because we're working in these pairs here, and just flatten them back out, is to make sure that the two wires in a pair are always lying flat next to each other, because obviously that's going to make it for a neater braid, whereas if they're crossing over and under each other within the pair, it's going to look a bit messy. So you can see they're pretty much separated out now, all of them, so it's going to become a lot easier now. But all you do now is continue this. So each time I push down the second pair, and then I push up the last one on that side, and then I bring the outer one over the first one and under the next two. So just kind of, the rhythm is over one and under two, and then just flatten these back out again, and then on to the next one. So there we go, keep going like this, get it as tight as you can, and then you need to get the length, obviously it's going to suit your cabochon. So I now made my length of braid here, and the length of mine to fit the cabochon that I'm using is about 10 centimeters long, or 4 inches. Now obviously they might be different, just make the length that you need to fit your cabochon. And then the braid itself looks a little something like this. So this is the front, and on the back here you'll find that if you do it with as tight a tension as possible, you get this little bit of a curve to it, so it dips in, and that's what we're going to use to capture the cabochon. So the front here is what's going to be outwards away from the piece that you can see, and then here the cabochon is going to sit inside this little well and fit just perfectly. So you then take your braid here, and then we need to shape it around the cabochon. So I'm going to actually use a cabochon for that, because obviously that's the best way to get the right shape that we need. And then we just need to, I'm placing the middle, or the bottom of the cabochon in the middle of the braid, and then I'm going to bring the sides of the braid up the sides of the cabochon and just kind of get the shape in place here. Now it doesn't need to be perfectly shaped when we let go, because it's still going to kind of bounce open. And then what we're going to need to do is we're bringing the two ends together at the top, and then obviously we'll need to fasten them together as well. So just most important thing right now is bringing these ends together at the top and getting roughly the right shape in place. And then what we're going to need to do at the top, I'm just going to take the cabochon away. Like I said, it kind of bounces open a little bit. Up here, what we have to do now is intertwine all of these wires. So that means each one, they're going to end up being like this, from obviously one side and then the other side, intertwining that way. So that means you just go through, start from one side and one end, take the very first one, make sure they're all kind of nicely separated out. Take that one, and then you take the first one from the other side, and then bring that opposite, so they're basically crossing over each other. Then take from the first side again, that's in the second one, and then take the one of the matching pair. So I'm making sure that I'm kind of using two wires that are right next to each other in the actual braid, because obviously that's how they naturally sit, and then just intertwine them all the way towards the back. So now I intertwined all the wires there, you can see at the top, and I also added my cabochon, so I'm pushing it nice and close, because then this is how tight the braid is going to be sitting around the cabochon to capture it there. And you'll be able to see I'm trying to move the cabochon quite forcefully, and it's not going to come out, obviously assuming we get it fastened as securely as well. So now what we need to do is start dealing with some of all these lengths of wire and also secure this top up here. So obviously the cabochon is going to stay in place. What I'm going to start doing is you're going to have, obviously one of your wires is furthest towards the front there. I'm just going to take the two first ones on this side and bring them out to the side. So around the side and towards the back. Again, the whole time I'm holding on to the cabochon and the braid, and I'm pushing the braid against the cabochon, and I'm also pushing down on all these wires up here to make sure this top part becomes as tight as possible. Then I take the front two from the other side and put them towards the back. And then again, the next two on either side. And they go towards the back, and they kind of stay in the same position, they're in the same order. So stay lying flat next to each other. And also just the next two on the left side here. Make sure you grab the right two, them ones, and then push them towards the back. So that's kind of some of our wires put into a position where we then need to also finish them off. And I then want to start securing them a bit as well. So I'm just going to do one side at a time. What I'm going to do is just take the top ones first, and then I'm going to grab the ends, try and make sure to grab them so they stay lying flat next to each other all the way to the ends, kind of get them even. Then what I want to do is get them through the braid on the side here. If you can see in the actual braid, we're going to have little gaps where the wire is going to fit through. So I'm not going to go through the very top one, I'm just going to step down about one gap. So this is kind of towards the back, you have a gap in the braid. So I want to put both of the lengths through like that, and then you'll be able to see they're going to come out towards the back. And then all I'm going to do is push them through, and the whole time I'm keeping hold of the braid around the cabochon just to still make sure it stays nice and tight as possible. And then otherwise just pull your wires through. Now just make sure that they're lying flat next to each other still, just to keep it nice and neat. Just need to bring it up a little bit. So I'm pulling them through. And then be able to see, just need to kind of swap them. There we go. That they're coming from the front there where all the wires are intertwining, and then kind of just around the side of the braid, put the other ones out of the way, and then going through the braid on the side there. So that's the first ones. Then I want to do the exact same with the other one and just pull it nice and tight. So I'm taking the other ones, so those were the front ones, and I'm just going to step down one. Again, just make sure the wires are flat next to each other, and then go through the next gap in the braid. You can see right next to it there. So push the wires through so they come out towards the back. And then, again, make sure to push the braid tight, and then just pull these all the way through. And pull that nice and tight as well. So you're not going to have too much of them kind of bulking out of the front. So that's now these two brought through the braid on the side there. So you just want to do the same with those two that we brought towards the back on the other side as well. So now I brought them through on both sides. You can see they're coming out there on the back, and the piece is already holding much better, making sure pulling them tight there. So then we have those sticking out towards the back. What we're going to do then is at the top here, we obviously still have quite a few. We're going to separate out the next four on either side and just kind of separate them out from the rest, and then we have all the back ones. So those are the ones I also just want to deal with. I'm going to flip it around towards the back and just get some of the other ones a little bit out of the way. Just kind of put your wires, gently put curves into them, shape them out of the way without putting bends in, just to make sure to not damage it. Then I'm going to go to the back here. We have back 2 first of all, then we have another 2, and then we have another 2. So there's 3 pairs really. So we're going to do the same on both sides. I'm just going to start with one side first of all. Just separate the others out as well. There we go, all the pairs are now ready. Then I'm going to start with the inner one. I'm going to make sure the line flat next to each other. Then what we need to do is go through, let's get them out of the way, again, some gaps in the braid. So take these 2 wires first of all, make sure they lie flat, and then get to the ends, and then we need to go through, again this is towards the back then, I'm going through some gaps, and these are the gaps, not the furthest where you have kind of the loop on the edge, but the next one in. So right here, and you want to go through kind of the first one with the inner one. Again, go through with those 2 wires, and then again they're coming out on the back there. Just push them all the way through. And before pulling them completely tight, just want to make sure they're lying flat next to each other. If they're not, just make sure to get them in position. And I just need to use a pair of pliers that can help kind of force the wires into the position you want them to. I'll grab onto them and just kind of twist them around. And then they click into place. And once you have that, pull it all the way down. And once you're getting close, you can also do 1 wire at a time, just to get it tighter. And again, you want to make sure to pull that nice and tight, constantly making sure we're holding on to this braid and also pushing down there, because obviously we want the back to also be quite nice and tight there. So that's the first one. Then the next pair, take that, smooth it out, make sure the wires are flat next to each other, and then we just step down to the next gap, but in the same kind of row, you could say, to the same place but just the next one down. Get both, well that's the same one I'm trying to go through, get both of your wires through. They're coming out on the back, grab hold of them, and then pull them through as well, same principle. And then when you do this, you want to do the same with the very last one. Obviously again, step 1 down. Make sure when you pull them, you do it gently so you don't get them sitting or kinking in a different way that you don't want. Pull them gradually tighter, and just got to double check that they're sitting right before I completely pull them tight. You can see here, it's bringing the back tighter and closer together as well. You can always maneuver them into place. Use your pliers up here if you need to, and help squeeze them down as well, because obviously we don't want to add too much bulk either. And then like I said, do the same with the last pair. You just step 1 more gap down in the braid, and that's going to come out towards the back as well. And obviously also do the exact same on the other side with those 3 pairs there. So now I brought all the wires through there, so you have all of these coming out at the back. You can see there's quite a few. What I'm going to do now is actually get rid of these and get them out of the way, because then we can more easily start to work on the bail up here without these kind of flying all over the place. So I'm just going to show you how I do that. What you can find is the ones we just brought through that came from the back there, you're going to have a little bit of gap between the braid and those wires crossing over to go through. So I'm actually going to take advantage of that and then just do 1 pair at a time here. So I'm just starting with this back one first of all. What I want to do is cut it off and then get it, come back around the edge of the braid and actually tuck it in between the braid and those wires that are kind of wrapping across. So kind of basically hide them out of the way, because obviously the ends of the wire, we don't want them sticking out anywhere. So I'm going to take my flush cutters and go in and cut off the excess here, and I need to leave just a short little tail of a few millimeters, something a bit like that. Then I take my chain nose pliers and then grab right in the end of those little tails that we have left, and then I just start to kind of roll it and bend it backwards. And then the more you do that, it's going to then tuck away right into that gap there, and then you can just kind of squeeze it in place to make sure it also sits nice and tight around the edge of the braid. So also use your chain nose pliers for that, because then that also secures it in place. And obviously we're going to be doing this with all of them, so it's going to add nice strength because they're all going to be secured in this way on the back, and at the same time hidden away pretty nicely as well, without being too obvious, but also no ends of wire are going to be sticking out anywhere. So go around and do that with all of the pairs there sticking out towards the back. So now I got rid of all the wires here on the back, and you can see we can still see the cabochon on the back as well, so nothing's covering it up. Then what we have left are the wires here at the top that we left. So these are the ones I'm going to use for the bail. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of separate them out. So I actually want to open them back up and bring them out to the original side where they came from the braid. So just do that with all of them, unintertwine them. So now I separated them out, and I also split them into pairs again. So I have them all 2 wires lying flat next to each other there, all the way around. So then what I'm going to do is use these to make the bail, and I'm going to make another braid for the bail. So this is going to be a 4-strand braid, but again, the wires, the pairs here, right next to each other, they also still need to act as if they were 1 strand. So make sure they're constantly lying flat next to each other. So I'm first going to just take the 2 front ones here, cross one over the other, a bit like that. Then we need to cross, I'm going to take my right one first, and we need to bring that over or under this one here, the next one in. So we need to look at what the last one did. So the one that we need to go over or under is coming under the other one in the middle, so that means I need to go under that, because it always needs to be the opposite. And then in towards the middle. And on the other side here, the previous one, the wire going out to the side, that's crossing over, so that means that now I need to come under this new pair that we bring in. So I bring that into the middle, over, and in the middle here we then need to cross these 2 over and under each other, but again opposite. So that means the right one came under here, so that now needs to be the one that goes over. The left one went over, so that now needs to come under the other one. So just cross them like that, and then pull them tight. And that's the beginning of the braid, you can see there. And you basically just want to keep doing this. That means the right one here I bring under to fit the last time it crossed over under, and then the left one goes over and into the middle, and then in the middle here we also just need to cross them opposite, so that left one goes under the right one, and then you just bring everything into position. Make sure you have a nice and even braid. And then you basically just want to keep going like this, the 4-strand braid, however long you need to get the size bail that you want. So now I made the length that I want here, and then what we need to do is shape the bail. First of all, I just want to push it forward a little bit, right down by where it starts. So just something a bit like that. And then I'm going to just take a crochet hook here. You can really use anything you have, some kind of mandrel, but I just find them quite handy having a whole set, and you've got different sizes you can use for mandrels. Then I'm going to put that behind roughly about the middle, and then the excess up here I'm going to bend around all the way towards the back, so the open end of the braid there comes down and meets up with the beginning part. And then we just need to get it closer together. So obviously these ends of the wire, just bring them around the side of the cabochon, and then we're going to have the bail sitting like that. So now obviously we need to attach this as well, because the bail is still loose, so obviously we want to make sure that it's going to be secure. So what we're going to do with it is quite similar to what we've done before by finishing off the other ends. You want to do the same on both sides as well. You want to have a look in here, there's still some space right by where we separated these wires out to begin with from the braid, but also just some gaps in the braid in there in the middle. So you basically just want to find gaps in the middle there to be able to go down through, so we can then pull it tight. You can see them can go through there, pull it tight, and then you just want to make sure it wraps around and then cut off the excess in exactly the same way that I showed you, pretty much there on the back. Just cut off a little tail and then secure it in place. Do that with all of them, nice and securely. Cut them off, and because they're all 4 pairs are going to be attached, it's going to still be nice and strong. And then your bail is going to be attached and your piece will be done. So I now finished off the bail and it's nice and secure, so you can choose to hang this on whatever you want to, whether it's chain or a cabochon braid, whatever you can think of. And then it looks like this. So obviously we have the cabochon that's then captured by this braid going all the way around the edge, gives it a nice and interesting look. And also the braid we made for the bail on the back, that's where we finished most of them off, but also you can still see the cabochon, so if it does flip around while you're wearing it, it doesn't really matter, you can still get that impression of the cabochon. So the back looks nice and neat as well, and that's what it looks like. So that's the tutorial for this pendant here. I have loads of other tutorials to capture cabochons and also using different braids, so please feel free to check out my channel for that. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed this one, and thank you very much for watching.